I used to be such a huge Joe Rogan fan. In fact, I watched him religiously or listened to him religiously on Spotify. In fact, Joe Rogan really was the reason that I got into podcasting. Many of you don't know this. This is just a bonus video. I normally do my atheistic, agnostic deconstruction type videos on Sundays and Wednesdays. And then other days of the week, I'll throw in other videos of, shit that I'm interested in. Hi, Timmy Gibson, former fundamental evangelical tongue talking Holy Ghost rolling, woo, pastor. Did that for 30 years. Spent 48 years as an evangelical Christian, pastored my own church, did the whole thing. I've got a lot of videos out talking a lot about that. I've got a lot of videos in the queue to come out for that. But this video, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Joe Rogan because I really was a big fan. I really liked Joe Rogan. And in fact, I mentioned my own podcast. So I know this is quasi podcast, but I had like a podcast on Spotify. It's still out there. You can go find it. If you go to Spotify or any podcast, you can just search Timmy Gibson Show. And you can, in real time, watch and listen to my deconstruction. I mean, it's wild. I'm just going to tell you, this is when I might have actually called myself a Christian-ish when I started the podcast. I think I started it in 2020. I'm pretty sure. I should have looked before I came on here. But you can just scroll all the way back to some of my first podcasts. And I mean, they're wild. I mean, we did a lot of podcasts called Four Guys and a Bottle of Whiskey. And it was just me and three of my friends with a bottle of whiskey and all of us on microphones. It's all audio. None of it's video. Frankly, I really didn't want to do video. But this has been a much better venue for me to talk about the things that I'm interested in. So, thank you. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers. So freaking cool. Once we get to 10,000, I'll finally do some kind of a live video, I'm sure, to engage with all of you that enjoy my content. So super cool. But yeah, Joe Rogan, like for me early on, I think because I was so early in my journey, I enjoyed Joe Rogan because he had on a lot of interesting guests, with a lot of different backgrounds. And it seemed like to me, again, I've never claimed to be an intellectual. I wouldn't say I'm an intellectual. I don't think I'm dumb either. But I've never really been an intellectual type, and so I really connected with Joe Rogan, even though I feel like Joe Rogan's pretty intellectual. I mean, he's a smart dude, but he just he had that likability factor, and I resonated with that. His casual conversation with just people from all over the map. And then when I first started watching Joe Rogan, he was more, at least how it felt to me, because I was just coming out of evangelical Christianity. So Joe Rogan was a stretch for me. I mean, back 6 years ago, he really was stretching my thinking. And he had a lot of people on. Joe Rogan is an atheist or agnostic, at least. I know there's so many Christians that like, Joe Rogan said Jesus on the show, he's coming close to being saved. And I love how all these Christian YouTubers just jump on any celebrity who mentions God or the Bible or has on a guest who is Christian, like the goofball Wes Huff and other various people that he has on. The Mel Gibson, I had to watch that just for the entertainment value. I love Mel Gibson's movies. I love Mel Gibson as an actor. Die Hard and or not Die Hard, that's Bruce Willis. What's the one with Mel Gibson where he says "Yippee ki motherfucker" or something like that? What word? Dang it! It's just I get like this because I don't write this stuff down. I make notes and I think about stuff and then I kind of consume it and I get it in my head and then I get on here and I'm like, what was that thing? What was that movie? Anyway, cuss and discuss down below. Just comment, tell me what movie that is. I'll maybe come up with it here in a minute. But I watched a lot of Mel Gibson's movies. Now you got to remember, I was a total evangelical, wild Christian whenever The Passion of the Christ came out, and so I remember being very emotionally invested in the movie. And when it came out, I mean, we sold tickets at the church, and we took, I don't know how many people we had. We had a lot. We had a huge group of people from our church that went to see the Passion of the Christ, and probably had a prayer meeting afterwards. Wild. Mm, man. I should actually get a sponsor for my show and get some coffee sponsors and creamer sponsors, because there's a certain creamer that I use called Silk Almond Creamer. Just FYI, if you're a coffee person like me, um, and I love cold brews. I mean, I like getting coffee out and about too. I love coffee shops. I love the whole culture of coffee. But man, I've got a sweet. I like Ethiopian beans, and then I like my silk almond creamer, and it's just delicious. Sprinkle a little pumpkin spice over the top of it, or a little cinnamon over the top of it. Yummy, 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 yummy. Anyway, yeah. So back to Joe Rogan. I watched him religiously and referenced him in a lot of my podcasts and a lot of the conversations that I had. And I had some wild. I mean, I had conversations with sex workers. I had conversations with a PORN star, a male PORN star. I don't know if I can say that word here. Um, in fact, I think that was one of the last interviews I did on my podcast. But for whatever reason, it never really took off fully. Uh, and and I think mainly because I wasn't talking about this kind of content. I think this, for whatever reason, I'm uniquely qualified to talk about this content, having spent so many years as an evangelical pastor. I think it gives me some street cred. It kind of gives me some street cred that I do know what I'm talking about because I was in that world for so long. Um, maybe it's that 10,000 hours thing. You do something for long enough, you become an expert. And so, and I'm also not a Bible scholar. I'm not a theologian. Again, I'm just a former fundamental Bible thumping type preacher. And I know my content resonates with some of you, right? It doesn't resonate with everybody. Clearly, a lot of Christians jump on my site or jump on my channel and make their lovely little Christian loving comments below. I did a video about that not too long ago as well, talking about, actually, I think that was the last video I did about Christian love, aka or Christian hate, aka love, or whatever I titled it. Anyway, so yeah, Joe Rogan, honestly, for me, he kind of lost me during his UFO era, his conspiracy theory era. I just despise conspiracy theories. Now, I'm not talking about conspiracy fact, things that actually are true that we just don't know fully yet. Clearly, I've said this many, many times. I'm for the truth. What is actually really true. And I realized that when I was an evangelical Christian, I was neck deep in confirmation bias. And when you believe a certain thing, you find articles and videos and books and people that already resonate and see life like you do. Well, since I was aware of this whole confirmation bias thing, in the beginning of my deconstruction process, I found Joe Rogan very helpful. And when I say Joe Rogan, I mean him and the guests that he had, and Jeremy doing the fact checking, which is super questionable at this point. Which I do want to tell you about a podcast that I highly recommend, and I will link it in the description below. I know I often say I'm going to link things, and I never do. Apologies for that. I need to get better at that. But I will link this podcast. It's called No, Know, No Rogan Experience. And these guys watch Joe Rogan so we don't have to. and they kind of fact check every big point of uh, that happens on the Joe Rogan show. And I don't think they do every episode. I think they pick some of the bigger episodes. I think it's a new podcast. In fact, Seth Andrews. How I found out about it is Seth Andrews from Thinking Atheist, who's an old friend of mine. I don't know if you guys know this, but Seth Andrews, he and I knew each other when I was a youth pastor, and he was actually, I take that back. It was when I was in Bible college down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Seth Andrews ended up being through kind of a relative. He was related to um, my previous life person. He was a cousin to somebody in the family. So I met Seth Andrews while he was a Christian radio DJ, and I was in Bible school and a traveling evangelist. I met him at a family reunion. So Seth and I kind of joke, we're quasi family once removed or whatever. So anyway, in fact, I did some podcasts in the early part of my journey with Seth Andrews while I was still a believer. I think at this time I might have been calling myself, I'm not sure I'm a Christian, but I follow Jesus. So I'm spiritual, not religious phase of my life. And I did a couple episodes with Seth Andrews on my podcast. And so I think you would find it entertaining, probably interesting to experience me in the beginning of my journey, before I became an atheist. And yeah, I think you would probably find it somewhat interesting. So go check that out. Again, I'll link my podcast on Spotify in the description here, as well as the No Rogan Experience podcast down below. And you guys already all know who the Thinking Atheist is, Seth Andrews' channel. So anyway, Joe Rogan kind of lost me whenever he was just into all these conspiracy theories. He was just so conspiratorial. And not only that, I mean, he was talking about the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and the fake moon landing, and just on and on, and UFOs and Bob Lazar, and I mean all that stuff. I Here's my thing about UFOs. I kind of side with Neil deGrasse Tyson on UFOs. They're just unidentified flying objects, which doesn't mean that then you can't make the leap that it's an alien race with these little spaceships coming to check out Earth. I don't buy that. I don't get into that. If you ask me, Timmy, do you believe that there's life out there? Well, yeah. I mean, I think it would be pretty feasible, or it would be rather unlikely that there isn't some life out in the universe somewhere. That would make sense to me. In fact, probably even life in our own galaxy, probably. You know what I mean? But I don't know, and frankly, I care about as much as anybody cares, except for the extreme. I have watched some documentaries on UFO stuff, and I look at it more as fun, sci-fi fiction. It's just fun to think about. And then Joe Rogan got onto the whole Atlantis, and and I liked Graham Hancock as a fictional writer. I watched the Ancient Apocalypse, I think is what it's called, on Netflix, and then I think there's a part 2 out now. Frankly, I've tried to watch a couple of them, and I just I kind of get lost in now that I'm more of a a person that really wants real evidence and not just conjecture and hypotheticals and what if and all that stuff. I just don't find that super engaging. For me, as entertainment, yes. As real, true, like science, I just don't. And even when it comes to the multiverse, you know, uh, maybe, right? I don't freaking know. But also, when I think about the multiverse, it's kind of like religion. It's like, it, it's just so it's us as humans with limited knowledge trying to explain things that are unexplainable and try to give some kind of context to them, try to make sense of certain things. So, I would definitely say I'm an open person that, if there was like some real legitimate proof of things, well, like, hey, I'm down. Like, show me the evidence. Like, give me some information here that, is testable, provable, repeatable, and true. I, you know, the thing for me that probably helped me in my deconstruction journey was a Bible verse. And that verse talks about, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That is, and I know Christians don't like to hear this, but that is, in fact, what led me right out of faith. You know, People say, well, it takes more faith to be an atheist. I did a whole video about that. It takes more faith to be an atheist than it does to be a Christian. It's like, that's just, is it an oxymoron? I don't, that doesn't make sense because it doesn't take any faith to be an atheist. It requires evidence, it requires facts, right? So uh, clearly, that's even the name of what we use when we describe or talk about a Christian is a person of faith. They're a person who believes something without a shred of evidence to support it. This is why I don't believe in heaven. I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in God, the devil, Lucifer, Satan. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in any of that stuff. Now, does that mean it's not out there? Well, of course not. Again, I say this often. There are so many things I don't know. I don't know if there's something else after this life. I don't know if we do indeed have a soul. I don't know. I don't there's no evidence for that, of course, right? But I don't know. And I don't insert God wherever I don't know things, which is the whole God of the gaps argument. I just don't fall into that camp where, well, we don't know what this is, so clearly is God. And of course, when a Christian says that, what they mean is it's Jehovah God, it's Jesus, it's the Bible God. That I find that just completely ridiculous. Clearly, I talk about that all the time. That's what my channel is often about. But yeah, so Joe Rogan kind of lost me during his conspiracy theory phase, and all of the. I mean, it was like every episode he had to talk about some just ridiculousness that honestly, for me, as someone who I I want to be learned, you know what I mean? Like I again, I don't think I'm dumb. I think I am somewhat intelligent, but I I don't want to just fill my mind, my limited brain capacity with conspiracy theories and UFOs and Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster and the Atlanteans and and all the stuff, right? I think again, it's entertaining to think what could have been way back when. Like I'm super interested in Göbekli Tepe. Did I say that right? And the pyramids and what were the pyramids really and all that stuff. I mean that stuff does interest me, but also, when you got on Joe Rogan's show, a lot of times it's him and the bros, talking about things. Just what do they call that when you just, you're just shooting the shit is what I would call it. But you're just spouting off things that there's no evidence for, but it could be, and it's what we used to say in the Christian world is itching ears want to hear. It's entertaining and it's fun to think about, right? It's fun to think about what were the Neanderthals like and how did they live, and were there cataclysmic events that wiped out an earlier advanced civilization. Yeah, of course, that shit's interesting, right? It is interesting. And I find it entertaining. But again, it was about 2 years ago that I started just kind of scratching my head. I was like, Joe, what are you talking about, man? What are you saying? And you clearly, and I still love Joe Rogan in a like, if I met him, I'd be like, bro, I think he's cool. I'm also in the MMA world. I'm a ring announcer. I've been a ring announcer for boxing events, jiu-jitsu tournaments, MMA, Krav Maga, all the practices. I'm in that world. I've been ring announcing for, goodness gracious, I think some 15 years now here in Kansas City. So I'm, doing those events. uh, Well, pre-COVID, I think I did about 8 to 10 events a year, and since COVID, that obviously changed all those public events clearly. And so we went a couple years, maybe even 2 or 3 years, where we were doing limited events of any kind. Um, and then now we're kind of back in it. I think this year I'll probably do about 5 events. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I connect with Joe in that way. I I don't watch all the UFCs. I'm not one of those people that you know every time there's a UFC, do I do the uh, pay, where you pay to get it and all that stuff. I don't do that. Depends on who's fighting. If I want to see it, I'll maybe go to a bar here close by the house, and if they have it, I'll watch it, kind of thing. So that's where I really connected with Joe. And like I said, early in my journey, Joe Rogan experience was stretching my mind, especially as an evangelical Christian that lived in this little bitty bubble. You know, Joe Rogan was clearly outside of the little bubble I came out of. So it was a part of my early journey. And 2 years ago, he just started losing me, and now I watched the Mel Gibson one part. I couldn't even get through it. I watched the Tucker Carlson one, was just hard to even listen to. Again, I'm not a hater. I'm just not. When people want to hate on people, I just that's not my jam. Okay, I'm not judging those that do videos and just hate on so many people like Joe Rogan, or like political figures, and they just bash them and all that stuff, and that's fine. That's their jam. That's not my jam. Just do your own research, do your own investigation, dig deep. But that's just not my jam. So I'm not big on hating on people. So I'm not going to sit here and say I hate Joe Rogan. I don't hate Joe Rogan. Um, I don't agree with a lot of what his show to me has become over the last couple years. He's definitely bought into, and I know he doesn't want to do this, and we're all guilty of it. Okay, I'm sure I'm bought into to some confirmation bias, even for me, as it relates to things that I don't know a lot about, and I've not been educated in those areas, and I don't understand those things a lot, and that's why I don't talk a lot about those things, because I don't understand them. I'm clearly not an expert in most every single area, except for even fundamental evangelical tongue talking religion, Christianity. That I am an expert, and I do feel, again, uniquely qualified to talk about that and share my experience, and give you, the viewer, insight. Because so many of you don't come from the evangelical background, and so I'm like newly into this world. But I really think I really connect with those who are questioning their Christian faith, who are deconstructing from their Christian faith. I think that's my little lane. That's my sweet spot. That's where I really can offer, some input and thoughts and ideas and perspectives, as well as give those who don't have that background thoughts and things from the mind of my evangelical brain that is still in there, right? I mean, I still have the evangelical tapes that run in my head. Now, not in my head like I'm questioning whether they're true or not, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's not going on. I've been out of it long enough. It's someone made a comment, I think, in one of my videos, and they said once you see the truth that the Bible's not true, it's impossible to not see it. And I can just tell you that is very true. That is a true statement, because for me, when people make comments or will email me and try to win me back to the faith and all that kind of stuff, yeah, that like I'm that would be impossible really outside of just hardcore evidence. I would never say that I would never ever, because I evidence would prove God to me, right? I mean, any kind of real evidence outside of an old ancient book. Um, if there was evidence that said, totally conclusively, like empirical evidence that it's true, hey, I'd be the first one to come on here and be like, hey, guess what? I really would. I really would. So I'm an earnest, honest seeker in that way. Clearly, I am atheist, but also there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And again, I really try to stay in my lane. But like these little videos that I'll do, little bonus videos to give my perspectives and my thoughts about other things, because what you believe does matter, right? And I used to say that as a Christian. What what you believe about things, it does matter. It really does, and so for me, I want, and I would assume you too, I don't want to believe lies. I don't want to believe in myths. I don't want to believe in fantasies. Again, that's why I left Christianity. I don't want to be giving my life to something as it's like it's true when it's not true, right? I just don't want to live my life like that. I want to live my life truthfully, honestly, with integrity, with character, you know? Um, that's important to me. And, when Christians want to, try to attack me in the comments below, you know, what they don't understand, and I actually recorded a video that'll come out later where I really talk about that my journey has been a very honest journey of seeking the truth, really digging in. And this is true of so many of the people that I've talked to who are now atheist or agnostic or even deconstructing. It was when they took an honest look, when they really removed the confirmation bias, the God goggles, and said, okay, I'm going to read the Bible word for word as it is. And if you can really remove the filters, you will see it differently. Okay. Anyway, I did a video about that. It'll come out later. I think it comes out actually around April is when that video comes out. So, and it's a decently long one, where I really journey through that whole process of what it was like for me. So be looking for that one. It's coming. So yeah, Joe Rogan. I'm not throwing hate on him, and I'm not doing that because I care what he thinks. He's probably never going to see this video, and that's fine. I doubt I'm going to be invited onto his show ever, and if I was, it'd be wonderful. I'd love to be on there, of course, talk about shit. It'd be fun. Um, but I find that Joe Rogan has really, really, really recently, in the last couple of years, in my little humble opinion, I've seen him really shift into a lane where a lot of his guests are they're in his lane. They believe what he believes. They see things how he sees it. And so with little variations and little differences, uh, and I don't want to get caught up in that. I don't want to get caught up into where all of a sudden now I'm in an echo chamber and everything I'm listening to is further supporting my false ideas or my false beliefs, or seeing things not as they really are. uh, that's why I think it's so important to not get in one lane and only listen to people in your lane. I think you got to jump out sometimes and just kind of see what's going on in the world to really get a fuller, better picture. And I've said this before. One time, I can't remember what the story was. This was years ago, but there was some story that I had seen on CNN, and I thought, I wonder what all those people over on Fox is saying. Like, what are they saying about all this stuff? And it was like, is this even the same story? You know what I mean? Like one news outlet is touting someone as like a hero, and then the other is touting this person as the most evil person on the planet. It's just so curious to me. I find that fascinating, and I'm sure you do as well. I mean, I can 100% start talking to someone, and depending on what the conversation is about, I can be like, they watch Fox, they watch MSNBC, or oh, they watch CNN, or oh, they watch Joe Rogan. I mean, it's and I don't want to be able to be labeled like that. I really, and if those of you that are that watch my show regularly, uh, there are probably some questions in your mind. What does Timmy believe about this, or what does Timmy think about this, or what's Timmy's perspective on this? And obviously I have opinions. I share my opinions as they relate to religion a lot here, and I give my general thoughts and ideas on what I think about just various things when it comes to politics and all that kind of stuff. Um, but I would definitely just in case you're curious, I'm a little bit more centric, leaning a little left, right? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at in the political scope. Um, I feel like I just, I don't know. I have such a desire, and I know that someone would try to criticize me for this, and that's fine. But I try to be as balanced as I possibly can, not to placate both people so that both like me. That's impossible. You can't do that. I mean, I voted a certain way, 100%. I voted a certain way, just like maybe many of you did as well. Uh, but I don't find myself to be in a cult when it comes to politics. I'm not in a cult. I don't just align 100% with a group and I'm like, I'm in the cult. I'm not in a cult. I was in a cult as a Christian, as an evangelical Christian. I spent 48 years in a cult. I have no interest in being in a cult anymore. It's just I I get I get triggered by anything that feels culty. And so, when I look at how polarizing everything is, it just feels culty to me. Again, cuss and discuss, tell your story down below, like, subscribe, do all the stuff, that's important. I will say this. I should have said this at the very beginning of the podcast or the show here. I do have a Facebook group, which I would love to have you be a member of. It's free. It's a free, fun. We share memes and encouragement and prayer requests and all that kind of stuff in there. It's not for Christians. If you're a fundamental Christian, you're not invited. But if you're deconstructing, agnostic, or atheist, or even if you say I'm spiritual but not religious, I think that you would enjoy the group a lot. It's called Timmy's Deconstruction Community. Jump in there, and I also will post things on a regular basis, and there's some things I'm working on coming up for the fall of this year. I'm wanting to do a live event, like a weekend meetup, a deconstruction conference of sorts. And I'm trying to see if there's interest in that. I would love to do that. If that's something that would interest you, make the comment below, or you can email me if you want to, and I'll get you more information. But the best way to do it, the best way to keep up with like that kind of information, would be to join that Facebook group, the Timmy's Deconstruction Community. I think you'll find out about that. All right, so this is just a bonus video. I just wanted to come on here and share just a little bit about my thoughts about Joe Rogan and why I just don't listen to him much anymore. I still subscribe to his podcast because there are some topics that I'm like, ooh, I'm curious. I'm curious what this person's going to say. I'm curious what how this interview will go. Or it's an actor or a musician that I'm interested in. and hearing a little bit about their story. I find that part fun. But yeah, I can't. I find Joe Rogan so now in an echo chamber and so much confirmation bias, which is why the No Rogan Experience, again, I'll link it below, why I think that's such a great podcast. I forget the guy's name. I think, is it Michael and Cecil? I think it's Michael and Cecil. Shout out to those guys. They've done a great job kind of breaking down some of the big episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience, and kind of explaining, where the fact checking is off and where it's wrong and where it's slanted. So I really think you should check out that if you have been a Joe Rogan fan, or even if you are a Joe Rogan fan. Like I said, I'm not throwing shade on Joe Rogan, man. He could kick my ass. I don't want to do that, right? I think he's doing what he's doing, and clearly it's one of the top 5 podcasts in the world. So kudos to him. Like that's cool. Um, but man, I would love to see Joe Rogan get a little bit more balanced. It's almost like he went from one side to the other. I would like to see Joe Rogan come back to the middle a little bit, and really, really be careful with some of the things that he says, or have someone there, not just Jamie, just doing quick little Google searches, which is what all of us can do, but really have someone on the show that would really challenge um, Joe Rogan. And I know what Joe Rogan's doing. Again, he's a likable guy. He's good at conversation. He just doesn't seem to be super knowledgeable about some things, which I'm not either, and nor are you, right? So I don't fault him for that. But it's like, if you're going to bring someone in, why not then the very next show bring someone in who doesn't agree with anything you think, Joe, and talk to that person, and get their perspectives, and don't bring in some goofy goober kind of a person that would lose the debate even if they were right. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, bring someone in that their information is good, or that what they're saying is probably more on the side of truth, but they aren't well spoken, not a very good interviewee, and don't do well in that environment. You know, that's not helpful. You need to bring in someone really, really good, who could really, like the guys from No Rogan Experience, like, have those dudes on, and talk to them about where they're seeing some of Joe Rogan's information is, you know, fake news or disinformation, not trustworthy, and just not true. That's my little opinion on Joe Rogan, and why I don't watch Joe Rogan much anymore, and why I think if you do watch Joe Rogan, you should definitely watch the No Rogan Experience, to kind of counterbalance what you might be hearing. Because, okay, I'll close with this, because I think I got sidetracked way back when I was talking about how important it is what we believe. What we believe usually comes from what we hear, what we read, what we see, all those things, and who we hang out with, right? So when we have, I think if I started watching Joe Rogan faithfully again, religiously, like I used to, it could taint me in certain ways. I would start becoming more skeptical about things that maybe I ought not be skeptical of. Does that make sense? So I just really value, and I think it's really important, especially for those of you that are like, um, well, like others here, and like I was early in your deconstruction. Man, it's really important what you're listening to. And I've said this before, there's a lot of atheists that I watch, and there's a lot of atheists that I just can't quite watch, because maybe they're just further along than me. I don't know why, but I watch them and I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know about, I don't resonate with that, so to speak. And like I said earlier, I just don't resonate with hate. I don't like being polarizing or hateful, even though I know Christians, Christians will think, maybe I'm coming across hateful or I'm mocking God or whatever. Um, you got to understand, right? I don't believe in God. So I don't view God as a real thing. So for me, I'm not mocking God. I'm mocking the religious faith that I used to follow, the belief system. It's not the individual people unless they're worthy of being mocked. If they're a TV preacher always asking for money, well, clearly I'm gonna ream them a new one for sure. But I've said this before. I have a lot of Christian friends. I really do. I still have some evangelical fundamental tongue talking friends. I have some progressive Christian friends. I have some, very open minded evolution believing Christian friends. And we get along fine. I can have great conversations with them, and they, some of them watch my videos, some of them know what I think. Sometimes we just don't really talk about that stuff. We talk about other things. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. It's just a one-off. It's a bonus video, not coming out clearly on the day that I normally bring out videos. All right, again, discuss below, like, share, do all the stuff. We're almost to 10,000. Woo! I can't wait. All right, peace, everybody.